So after many glowing recommendations, I have finally watched and caught up with Ranking of Kings. I'm actually expecting to do a bunch of anime reviews this year because there's a lot of good anime coming out this year. If you are a weeb, this is a really good year for you. But Ranking of Kings is a new one that I've never read the manga for. I've never even heard of until this anime came out and had all of these recommendations. People saying, oh, don't miss this one. This is a hidden gem. Although I guess it's not really hidden anymore since a lot of people put some hype around it. After watching it, I can confirm, yeah, it's good. It's pretty solid. But there is something that I absolutely have to talk about first when starting this review, and that has to be the art style. When I was first introduced to screenshots of this show, I was under the impression that this was going to be a lighthearted fantasy about this, kid who doesn't speak. I wasn't expecting there to actually be a plot behind it, just because of the art style alone. It is very cartoony, and in a way, pretty faithful to the original art style of the manga. You could argue that one is more well-polished than the other. I mean, they did make Boji look a lot more chibi in the anime in comparison to the manga, but then there are a lot of characters that are a little bit roughly drawn in the manga that are a little more well put together design-wise in the anime. But as I actually started getting into the series, I noticed that the art style didn't quite match the tone that was actually in the anime. And it's not like this is the first time that I've kind of seen that, where the art style is kind of mismatched with the actual tone of the show or manga. Obviously, this can be done for subversion reasons. It can be done in a clever way, but it's not really meant to be done in a subversive way, from what I can tell. It just kind of seems like this is the art style that the original mangaka drew in, and they just wanted to be faithful to that art style. Granted, there are other shonens like this, where the art style is more cartoony. Obviously, the big one that I think people will mention is One Piece. One Piece was incredibly cartoony when they first started off, but One Piece kind of did this thing with its art style as it matured, where it would get more serious as the tone got more serious, and more goofy as the tone got more goofy, and they kind of volleyballed back and forth with that. I do find it interesting to talk about, so long as I'm doing a video about the show, because I'm always a little bit self-conscious about my natural art style being too goofy for a lot of stories that I write. I do comics myself, and that's the main reason why I will typically hire artists to help me with comics that I don't feel like my art style is a good match for. I feel like a lot of people who look at Ranking of Kings from the outside, not really understanding what they're getting into, will expect a completely different show, just like I did. On the flip side, though, some people might really like the fact that the art style doesn't match the tone of the series. They might see that as being kind of quirky, kind of interesting. The only time when it really bothered me how the art style looked was mainly the design of the Shadow Clan creatures. Obviously, they're very low effort, cartoonish designs, and I get the idea that they're kind of supposed to be a fluid, slime-like shape, but I just don't like how it looks. Another thing about it is the fact that Boji is supposed to be able to read lips, and in order to compensate for the fact that he's supposed to be friends with this shadow creature, they just kind of pop out a mouth from this design, which looks like a claw, and Boji's supposed to be reading the lips of this? I have to suspend my disbelief quite a bit for that one. But putting the art style aside, let's actually talk about the story, because the story is very intriguing. We follow the main character, Boji, who is the son of two strong giants, and a young prince with an inability to hear or speak. And despite being the son of two giants, he was actually born quite small and frail, and has the inability to ever build up his strength. Because of all this, when his father finally does pass away, he gets cheated from the throne despite being the oldest son and despite despite his father's will saying that he would take the throne, they give it to his younger brother, who is much more capable. Which all kind of makes sense. How are you going to lead your people if you can't even communicate with them? But Boji does want to be king, even if it seems like an unachievable dream. And being cheated out of the throne kind of gives him the motivation to go off on his own and seek strength, seek a way to become more king-like. But little does he know when he leaves the kingdom that there are villains operating from the shadows who have their own evil plot in place, and that sets off a whole chain of events. But I won't spoil too much of what goes down in the show. You should really check it out for yourself. For the most part, this is your typical shonen show. There's a wide cast of characters, and the main character, of course, has that trope of seeking to become stronger to defeat his foes. There's also that theme of friendship. But I think what mostly sets apart this show from other shonens is, well, for one, there's a lot more plot that happens episode per episode, but also there's this ongoing theme of characters neither being good or evil, but rather this gray area of we do both good and evil things. You'll have characters who mean a lot to the main characters, admitting to doing objectively evil things. You'll have evil characters unexpectedly doing good things. It kind of leads to this back and forth tension. Everyone has their own reasons for doing what they do, but granted, it does get a bit exhausting from time to time. There are very few characters on the roster that are purely good. And I don't even think there are any characters that are necessarily purely evil. I can admit it's thought-provoking to have so many characters be in this neither good or evil gray area, but part of what I like so much about shonen is being able to root for good to triumph over evil, and it becomes a little bit more difficult when good is not that good. It's like, should I root for this guy? I don't know. He kind of seems like an asshole too. All that being said, they do a pretty good job with the characterization in this show, and it's kind of hard to watch it without having favorites. My favorite right now is definitely Queen Hilling. She is mwah. And of course, how could I ever do a review of Ranking of Kings without talking about the crazy animation this show has? I mean, the fight scenes are so fluid. This is one of those situations like with One Punch Man where the animation team just genuinely liked the source material, so put a lot of effort into making the animation look good. It's worth checking out alone just so you can see this animation right here. Regardless of whether or not you like the art style, that is just pure eye candy. But of course, Ranking of Kings has not finished its first season yet, and like I said before, I've never read the manga even now. I'm tempted to go check out the manga though, just to see where this crazy story is going. There is a lot of story that you get episode per episode, and they do a great job at keeping you on your toes all the time. Granted, there are going to be a couple of moments, at least for me there were, where things didn't really quite fit together. Things weren't really quite making sense. But granted, this is for a more teenage, younger audience than I, so you know. But if you haven't seen it already, definitely go check out Ranking of Kings. It's pretty good so far. I'm very excited to see where this heads in the future. If you'd like me to go check out the manga and actually review the whole manga series, let me know in the comments below, because I am curious about doing that. If not only to compare and contrast, but I also want to see how the story will eventually end, of course. And also let me know what you thought about Ranking of Kings personally, if there's any other animes coming out this year that you would like me to review. I've already got quite a few in mind that I definitely want to review this year. There's so many good anime coming out. It's so great. Also, like the video if you did enjoy. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye! This video is sponsored by no one. Which is exactly why you should head over to burningstarcomics.net, where you can purchase independent comics made by me and my friends. You can even head over to Subscribestar, where you can join the fan club and get sneak peeks at new comics and art made by yours truly. Speaking of the fan club, let's give them a shout out.
Program restart.